I'm a user researcher, like Lyndon said, with 352. And today we'll be talking about a couple of things. So, what I have set up here for our agenda is really just to build a common language around research methodology, share what's possible to research and when, and really hopefully you guys feel empowered about other ways that you can leverage research in your own businesses. So again, my name is Shara. I'm leading research for what I would call a corporate startup. So, to give you guys some more context, I work with a client that's in the insurance space, over 100 years old. And they really came to my firm to say, we want to figure out how can we disrupt ourselves. So, we know that the insurance market is changing and we want to be ahead of the curve. We don't want to be one of these companies. We don't want to be like Blockbuster or some of these other companies that were, um, you know, titans of their day, but now have been disrupted by really smaller, faster growing startups. And so, what they tasked us with is like the question of, could we build something that maybe is not even within insurance? And so my work has really been around one, leading a lot of the research to figure out what would we build, even like where is there a problem? Where does pain exist? And is it enough that it's worth building? And then we are now at a place where we've actually pitched, got $15 million in funding to build, and we have built a product that's now in market. And now my job has pivoted a little bit more to like now understanding and doing research around, do people like what we came up with? Do they like what we built, or do we need to figure out other ways helping them solve their pain, and in this case pain around dealing with home repairs. So I've been in this doing this work for over 10 years. I'm also an avid traveler and aunt to my adorable niece Charlotte. So, with that, I'm going to start off with just kind of how I look at user research, which is really around trying to uncover barriers or frustrations people face. And that can be in how they interact with your product or services. But sometimes that's not even, sometimes I don't start there. So, like I said, with the work that I'm doing, I started before there was a product or a service that we had ownership of. Now, there may have been products and services people are using, but my focus very early in my work was really just around, you're a homeowner, tell me what's painful for you. What are the joys of home ownership, and then what are the things that you just wish there was a better way to deal with, and you get super frustrated by. If we think about businesses like Uber, right? So Uber started really around this pain of not just, it wasn't really about ride sharing, like people wanting to share rides, but things like, I may not always have cash on hand. I want to be able to know exactly where my driver is. I want to be able to easily share a ride with my friends, things like that. So, and finding out where those pain points exist, and then building something in service of trying to solve for it. And so user research, again, is really trying to uncover what those things are. And I should add, if at any point anybody wants to stop me, ask questions, have conversation, please do so. I'm not opposed at all. In fact, I love for this to be more conversational. And I've built in some quick exercises for us to do as a small team, because often in research, you work in teams. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So, the number one rule for me with research is your participants are your subject matter experts. So, I'll probably continue to use a lot of examples from my work that I do. And so, as I mentioned, I currently am working on a product that's in the home services space. So, it's not upon my team to determine what is painful or what is the problem that we think we should solve. We really look to our participants, our customers, our users, our potential users, anyone who we believe could potentially touch our business. Those are the people that we want to hear from and have help inform our decisions. So when you hear people talk about like user-centered design or human-centered design, that's what this is really about. Making sure that you're putting your users at the center of the work that you do. So examples of that include, for my work, often I would even go when talking with homeowners about dealing with repairs. I would sometimes go with them to their home. We would go to their home, we would sit and we would observe them, and let them tell us, but then also observe, right? So, not even the things that they're telling us, but as we watch, how frustrating is it for them to try to manage their household, and they've got kids and they've got something that's not working in the home. Like, we're trying to pick up on all of those cues, but we're really letting the homeowner, in our case, lead us. I would imagine if I was in banking, then I want to talk to my customers that actually using my product, and maybe even sit with them, have them taking me a day in the life of things like that, to really find out how do they use my product. As mentioned, I'm a user researcher. I do work closely with marketing as well, but really at the center of that is really trying to design an experience that works for our users. And you'll often see different imagery that'll show you. You may design your product one way, but your users are really going to determine how they're going to use it, and you may find something interesting there as well. I can think of a company like Instagram. For those of you that are familiar with Instagram, it started off as the founders initially wanted it to start as a company to help people find other people at bars and happy hours. And they didn't get a lot of traction with that, but it had a photo element to it where you could take pictures. And the founder noticed that his girlfriend was using that piece of the product. She wasn't using it for the happy hours. She was using it to take pictures because he had created these cool filters and she liked how her photos looked. And so he pivoted away from this happy hour product to this photo product and this sharing product, sharing images, kind of social sharing and photos. And again, that was a really good example of where he let his user really lead him into what pains and things they were trying to solve for, instead of forcing this happy hour, find your friends kind of app. So a couple other things before you kick off research. Make sure that you plan ahead, but allow flexibility for time to dig deeper when it makes sense. So if you're conducting research, whether you're going out and talking with someone or you're doing interviews, give yourself a little bit of time, because what you will find is you'll kind of start with an assumption and then you'll start to learn into things that could be into themes and patterns as you get feedback. And so you want to give yourself some space to be flexible in case you find something really interesting. You may start off with a survey around, I live in Atlanta, so living in Atlanta and living on the east side of Atlanta. But what you may end up realizing is that people don't really want to talk about that. They want to talk, everybody's all of a sudden talking about, I don't know, working from home more. You may then want to amend your research to get some additional learnings there because you may uncover something interesting. So make sure that you continue to have flexibility. Okay, let me pause this for a second so I can slide this down. Okay. You also want to make space for participants to want to share honestly with you. So often when I am talking with users, I make a point to not jump right into the questions. It's particularly harder questions or more vulnerable questions. I may start the session by just asking them, tell me about yourself, little warm-ups, little icebreakers. Maybe we start off with an activity just to get them comfortable, and then we move into some of the more deeper questions once they understand that this is a safe space for them to chat. And that's really important because you want your participants and anyone that you talk with to be candid with you, and to be comfortable, almost not wanting to tell you what you want to hear, but telling you genuinely how they feel. So often when I talk with anyone, in doing research. And even when I do surveys, I overstate to them that this is a safe space. You can't hurt my feelings. Sometimes I will strategically tell them I have nothing to do with the product, so they feel even more comfortable talking with me. So yeah, definitely. Next, what I'm going to say is, oh, and I'm sorry, I'm just seeing comments. So stop me if you put a comment and I didn't didn't acknowledge it, because I'm happy to go back. Do you suggest more open-ended or closed-ended questions? I generally try to go for open-ended questions because that allows the person to talk more, and it allows for nuance. So if I ask you, do you like to go to the beach, you may say yes, because I've kind of led you to tell me, do you like to go to the beach? But if I ask you, tell me your favorite vacation destination or your most memorable vacation destination, you may harken back to a time you went to the mountains or something else. And that gives me an opportunity to probe into that more, versus kind of leading you where I want you to go. I don't always say no closed-ended questions. I think you should just be very cautious and very strategic about when you use those. Um, because there are times where you just need to know, right, before you go down a path, is this true for you? And then advance into your open-ended questions. So that's kind of how I approach that. The next thing I'm going to share here is start with a conversation and listen a lot. I prefer conversational kind of interviews, and research. I think it's super easy, right? So you can take the time to develop a survey. You could take the time to put together a focus group and things like that. But really, it's just the one-on-one conversation, and then you having several of those. There's a rule of thumb that usually, particularly when you're looking to learn something, once you've heard it a couple of times, maybe 5 or 6 times over, you're starting to unlock themes. So you don't have to have a lot of conversations, but you just want to have some really good ones with the right people and make sure that you're listening and listening a lot. So again, that goes back to the participant or your research participant being your subject matter expert and really making sure you dig in and listen and let them kind of lead the conversation. Get out of the building and go to your participants. This is a big mantra in the startup space, which is, you at some point you just got to get out. You can't sit behind your desk. I know you guys talked about primary and secondary research. Those things work well together. So you may start by doing some secondary research to say, who should I even talk to? What does this group look like? Where are these people and how can I find them? But at some point, you just got to get out and go. You can't stay behind your computer. As uncomfortable as I know that can be, I think when I started with 352, the very first thing they had us do within the first week was, we're in Midtown near Georgia Tech. And they told us, here, we want you to go out and just stop people on the street and find out about health and wellness and where pain exists around that space. And if we were to build something, what could that look like? And so it was literally us just going out as a team and stopping people on the street and asking to talk to them. I don't know if you have to get that literal, but but the point still stands that, you just need to get out and start getting in front of people or virtually talking to people, even picking up the phone and just talking to someone is really important. And then finally, facilitate research in small teams. I really do appreciate when I do research, and it's a luxury at times when you can bring someone else in, at least someone else in, to help you. When you are moderating a session, you want to be as engaged with that person that you're talking to. And so having someone else there who can not only take notes, but also observe, so they can pick up as well on it. Were there any facial cues or body language or nonverbals that they may have noticed while you were deep in kind of leading the discussion, would be really helpful to you. And they can also help you capture notes in real time. But if not, there are some tools you can use to help with transcribing something as simple as just bringing a recorder and telling your participant, do you mind if I record you? I also videotape all of my sessions, so that way I can go back and reference that. And it helps with like stakeholders as well. So if you guys have an investor, or you're going and you're wanting to show how you think you have something really compelling, sometimes having that video or that audio of someone saying how much they love your idea, or would absolutely been hoping that somebody would build this one day, or can't believe this doesn't already exist. Those type of sound bites are really generally positively received and really helpful. I know our team used it a lot when we were making our pitch. So user research generally falls into 3 buckets: exploratory, generative, and evaluative. And if you look at kind of like this funnel that I try to sketch, this is really trying to illustrate that you start off really broad with like, and then you narrow into your evaluative research. And I'm going to explain what I mean by starting broad and then narrowing in. So if we start with exploratory research is where sometimes you get to start here. Sometimes someone's already done this work, but generally this is where you're deciding, there is something missing in the home services space. Like, people are still very frustrated and there's something that's happening there. Or I would like to open a boutique, and I know that this boutique has to be different than what's currently in the market. And so I'm going to do some research to understand where are those gaps. I can give you an example. I was talking with my brother a couple weeks ago, and my brother is really tall, and he was saying how he went to a department store and it's just a struggle for him to find clothes that still feel very trendy and stylish, but also accommodate the big and tall man, and can find it easily off the rack somewhere. And so he might do some exploratory work around the kind of like fashion and clothing for big and tall men, and understand where is their pain. Is it around finding things? Is it around the style? All of these things. He may have questions, and he may uncover something else. He may discover that it's not even about the clothes, it's about something else. So, but you start there, or someone has started and done that work for you, and then you move into generative work. Generative is where you really are building upon the things that you learn in exploratory and going, okay, well, let's now come up with some ideas and begin testing it. Let's see if we can generate research that's going to inform, are we getting closer to solving the problem, or are we moving away from solving the problem? So with the example with my brother, he may step back and go, okay, I think people want a clothing store. And so he's going to figure out, how can I create, in research, we call it stimulus. How can I create stimulus, something that people react to, something that's representative of my idea, to give me a read or indication that this is something they want, or this is something that they don't want. And so that stimulus can show up in a lot of ways. That doesn't mean, for research purposes, that my brother has to build a store. Maybe he just builds a page. Maybe he just designs a page on a sheet of paper. Maybe he just takes out designs an ad for a store, and sees, to understand, is this something that seems interesting to you? And he'll get more discussion, he'll get more questions, and it will help him narrow in a lot faster on what is the thing he should build. So I think the big takeaway here is that this is really about generating ideas, and potential solutions, but not the solution. You want to still be somewhat open, and you're still learning. You're still trying to understand what is the right thing. So I know that there's pain around shopping for clothes for big and tall men, but there may be 100 ways to solve for that. Let's test a couple of those. Let's do some research on a couple of those to see, are we getting closer to solving or further away? And then finally, evaluative research, which I do a lot more now that my team has built a product. Evaluative research is when you're on the other side of the product and you're trying to determine, does it work the way we intended it to work? That's one of the big questions. And is it really meeting our users' needs? So it may work the way we want it to work, but users may go, I don't actually care enough to use this app, or this app works just as you design it, but it's really burdensome to use. It's really tough. It's really hard for me to figure out where to go. Or do people just enjoy using it? Facebook has designed itself in a way that makes it really sticky. People don't want to leave the site. They find a lot of delight out of using the product. It's not always about the functionality of it, but there is enough there that makes it delightful for people that they will still continue to come back. So I'm going to pause right here before I start an activity, but I wanted to see if there were any questions about anything that I've discussed thus far. And I'm trying to pull back up to make sure I don't think I see anything in the chat.
I've got a question. So with regards to market research, uh, is it all encompassing? Meaning, I mean, no matter what business it is, there's market research that needs to be done. I'm looking at the different businesses of the attendees in here tonight, and they range from hair braiding to transportation to music to customizing bottles to IT, construction and construction management, foster care, education. We even have a mobile lounge, if you can believe that,
Oh, nice.
and nonprofit organizations. So does all of them have some kind of market research that they can benefit from?
For sure. I would say absolutely. If you want someone else to purchase your product or use your product, then you will benefit from research. Um, and it goes back to that point of like human-centered design, user-centered design. Um, when you bring in the folks that are using your product and letting them inform you, it's really invaluable. And there are actually some statistics and studies that show how much more money companies save and have a better return on their investment when they do research up front. Research cost a lot less than hiring a team to build your product or build your full website or go out and help you sell your product, a sales team, things like that, and just your own sweat equity, right? You want to be smart about where you invest your time. And so really having those insights up front about what is most important to your customers is invaluable, but also it allows you to get um, better informed about what you're building. And also, it strategically is a way to start getting your idea in front of users early so you can start building up those relationships as well. There's something just human nature wise, when people feel like they are being consulted and included in something, they're more invested to help you. So you can be very strategic about your user research as well as a way to continue to get your product in front in the right eyes and get early kind of adoption. So I'd be hard pressed to think of, and we see a lot of principles of user research and design thinking that are applied across industries that are never going to. If you think about, I think I've seen it in government entities use these type of principles. I've seen hospitals use this to figure out like how do we design MRIs better for um, um, our younger patients and things like that. So I think, yeah, I think it's just a super useful tool, and it's one that's continuous. So research should never stop. You should never go, well, we did research 5 years ago. This is what we learned, and this is why we're going to do this forever. Like you always are wanting to constantly talk to users who are using your product and testing new ideas. Um, as quickly as you can to get as much learning and continue to iterate your product as you can. Any other questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So my first question is to ask you what's been your experience doing user research, Like, do you find that people are typically anxious to be, to be helpful, to answer your questions? Because I have to be honest, it's difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around thinking that, we've been talking about customer discovery
Mm-hmm.
in this class, and I'm trying to come up with the questions and everything, but I almost feel like, okay, now once I go out there and I ask people, they're pretty much just gonna shoot me off, or so I'm just curious, what's your experiences has been, like, is it something that people are typically, truly down for, or is it a hard thing to do? And then
Yeah.
my second question was, I'm just curious, like, what type of questions you actually ask.
Yep, that's a good one. So on the first point, I would say sometimes it can definitely be uncomfortable. I gave the example of like when we started, we just really pushed out the door and said, go find, do 5 interviews and see what you can learn from people. And we had to stop people. Um, I so you do kind of have to build a little bit of a tough shell because you'll hear no from people sometimes. But I think as an entrepreneur, that's just going to be kind of a muscle you're going to have to build anyway because you're going to hear a lot of no's. Um, but there are some things that you can do to make it easier for you. So you may do some things like I advise people from there are times when you want to show things to friends and family. There are times where you have to be careful of that. And in my work, we always say, we're not building for ourselves. So it's important that you may think your idea is great. Your family may love your idea, your closest friends may love your idea, but you do want to get a little bit more removed from that. Just because it's way too easy to have biases creep in, even if people unintentionally people just naturally don't want to hurt your feelings. So and the closer they are to you, sometimes the harder that is. And then you have to think about it. If you were to go to an investor and say, hey, I would like $1 million investment in my business. And the only thing you can say is, well, my family really loves this idea. It's going to be hard to sell them on that. Whereas if you can say, we've talked to, several users who've given us early indication they would sign up for this. Maybe they gave us email addresses, or maybe they paid us something, or maybe this unlocks something really interesting. And here's all of the insights we have and what we want to build. I think that's more compelling. So ways to work around that, if you do have some hesitancy about reaching out to people or stopping people, is maybe working, I mean, amongst your peers here to say, hey, this is kind of the space I'm looking in. Here's some of the people I'm interested in talking to, basically like a profile, right? Like, I'm looking for people who own a home, who have repair issues. Do you guys know anyone? So then you get referrals that way, and you can do a softer introduction. Hey, my colleague recommended I speak to you or referred me to you. Usually that works a little bit easier. You could also use tools like Facebook to post and ask for, does anybody know of anybody I can talk to dealing with this type of issue, or who has this type of profile? And then you can, if you're doing a survey, which I'll talk a little bit about, if you're doing surveys or things like that, to give you some high level kind of insights or direction about where you should go. What you could do is you can create surveys and post those on things like Facebook. You can post them in places like Reddit, and you can add, I always do this, which is I always ask whenever someone participates in a survey, would you be open to talking with me for 5 minutes? Or do you know somebody else who I should speak to about this? So that way that can start building up your list. So you're not going in as cold. But once people participate in this, I find, particularly when you find people who are more likely to adopt and try new products early, and don't care as much about how fancy it looks, but it's really innovative or interesting. When you find people like that, they usually enjoy talking with you. They want to be on the cusp of what's happening and what's new. And so once you find them, it's pretty easy to get them to open up and chat with you. As far as the questions that I ask, it really depends, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Actually, in this next exercise we're going to do. So but what I will say is I do start off with like, I will put together like a discussion guide. So based on whatever it is I want to learn, I just kind of list out what are the things I want to learn. And then I think backwards about what questions will help me get to that answer. Um, so if I want to learn about what does it mean to be a homeowner, I may start off with just, tell me about how long have you been in your home? Tell me about why you selected this home. Um, and we'll kind of just continue to cascade until we get enough questions answered that I can begin to get a better understanding of what type of homeowner they are. Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. All righty, so I'm gonna shift into an exercise. And we tried this breakout thing earlier yesterday, so let's see how this goes. But before we break out, what I want to do is we're gonna do an exercise that we'll carry through in a couple spots here that hopefully get you guys kind of a day in the life of the work that I do and how I execute research and how it starts. So this goes right into that kind of like question, what questions to ask. So I want everyone to think, imagine that you want to start a new business that's going to help early stage entrepreneurs launch their new products. And so my question to the group is, or as you break up into small teams, is how would you begin to uncover if there's a true business opportunity? What are the big questions that you will need to answer that question around opportunity, like if there's a true business opportunity? So what do you need to know about early stage entrepreneurs, and particularly those that are launching new products? What do you need to uncover to help you understand whether it would be, if there's something there that you could build a business around to help these early stage founders? So what I'd like for you to do is, at this time, we're going to have you guys break up into teams of 2 and just discuss this question of how would you begin to uncover if there's an opportunity here for you to start a business helping entrepreneurs launch their businesses. And then also think about what stage of research is appropriate for this. So we talked about exploratory, we talked about generative, and we talked about evaluative. So if you guys, I think Linda's going to help, but we'll break you up into teams of 2. And
so, yeah, we got 16 people, excluding me and you. So that leaves 14. So that's 7 groups of 2.
Yep.
So I just need to set it up right here.
Yep.
Okay, stand by, folks.
And I'll put timer up here on the screen. So I'll do a timer of like 5 minutes for you guys just to talk. This is very informal. So please just have fun with it. And we'll come back and let everybody kind of share.
Why don't you and Shanna have a quick discussion that is open to the group? Shara, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, so what I'll do is maybe I'll start, but I would love to hear for those of you that got a chance to go through it to also share. Matter of fact, before I disclose how I would do it, and we can talk it through, maybe if one of the other groups shares what you guys discussed, because I'm just curious to see
how
you guys approach it.
Hey, this is Sadonna and Anastasia.
Hello.
We'll share.
Great.
So we were talking, and if we understand correct, it's about, asking. So we came up with 5 questions to ask someone who is interested in entrepreneurship and starting their own business. And so our 5, and our 5 first 5 questions to them is: do you know where to start? Do you know where to begin finding help and resources to start? Do you know anyone who is doing what you would like to do? Do you know where and or what you want to market? And finally, do you know who your target audience is?
Yeah, that's right.
So those are our first 5.
Yep. I like it. I think, you guys are hitting on the key kind of things that you need to walk away and understand. My only recommendation would be is to switch some of the questions to make them more open ended. And why I like to do
Okay.
that is so I can see where people are going, or even get them to give you examples of things they've done in behalf in on their own. So you could always start with who is your target audience and see who do they go, I don't have one,
Oh, I
or
got you.
you know what I
So
mean?
so we would change our wording, like, so tell us what you've done. So what have you done so far?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's the counter to, do you know where to start? What have you
Yep.
done so far?
Yep.
Then and where has that, tell me now, tell us where that has now led you um in your resource search. What has that led you to think about?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um who are who are the top 3 people in your industry that, you like their website,
I
you
like
like the
that.
work they're doing, and you like the trajectory they're on.
Yep.
um Fourth, does that give you any new ideas, for broadening your market? And finally, tell us more about your your most highly targeted audience.
Yep, yep. I really
Okay.
like those. And that way, that's how when we talk about like having more conversational discussions, it pushes them to go beyond just telling you yes or no, but starting to converse with you. And then you have an opportunity to probe even more. So you may hear them say something that for you goes, that's really interesting. Tell me more about that. Or you may hear them say something that you didn't expect that you want to learn more about. They may go, well, actually, our target audience is toddlers and they're in a business of selling alcoholic beverages, and you may go, wait, tell me how we got there. So you'll be able to probe on that, whereas if they say, yeah, I have a target audience, we'll miss that. So
Toddlers
so good
lead to
job.
an alcoholic beverage.
Yeah. I like to go to extremes when I'm giving examples. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to share or questions that they have? Were there parts of this that were confusing, or you just kind of got stuck, or
Well, I'd like to go through every pair if we can. So
okay,
everybody
great.
that
Let's
was
do it.
let's see what everybody had to say in each group, and so I can know who worked with who. Who's next? Okay,
I
Cameron.
can go. I can go next.
Okay, Cameron, who are you with?
I was with Jackie.
Okay,
Jackie Les,
right.
and we were kind of confused because we thought there were going to be. We were broken up into groups of 7, 2 groups of 7. So we were waiting for a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
Then we got into a discussion, and I'll talk first, and then I'll let Jackie give her point of view.
Well, Cameron, I think you did a very good job in leading the discussion, so you can just go ahead and just do it.
Well, I was saying that in the field that I'm trying to start a business in, which is music licensing, the structure of the clients and the buyers are already there. What I have to do is what I'm trying to do is bring my products into that market that's already set up. So the research part for me would be trying to find out which music supervisors I should be targeting based on the music that they've used in the past, based on the films they've worked on, the TV shows they've worked on, and that would be my research. So, and then if I'm trying to impart this knowledge to people that are also starting, I would tell them the same thing. In a business like that, you have to find out um, who has worked with that type of product before, where it's selling, um, who they're targeting those products to, and that's basically as far as we got.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay. Good. Who's the next group? Okay.
Hi, I got oh
I,
Go
I
ahead.
don't.
Oh,
Go
see,
ahead.
it's me and Rodney at the same time.
There we go. There we go.
So it was Candace and Rodney.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rodney. You started.
Okay. So the first question we had was, "What is your product?" And the next question we asked, well, uh, can you make a profit? And then we follow that with, well, what problem are you solving with your product? And who is your customer? And then we ask, so what is your competitive advantage? Ken, do you want to ask the other one, tell the other ones, or you want me to?
Okay. Let's see. How are you gonna reach your target customer? What marketing methods would you use? How are you going to fund your business? And who is your team?
That's great.
Great. Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. Who's up next now? Whose name have I not seen here? Monroe. Okay. Who are you teamed up with?
Renita
Okay.
and
Here I am.
all right. Did you want to start off, or did you want me to go ahead?
No, you go ahead, sir. You go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, what we had talked about was do you know your target market, which was one. We had to do research on that, and so that we know, if our product will be good for who we're targeted to.
Now, did y'all have a product or a service or
We just
one of
kept
both?
it general.
Okay.
We just kept it general.
Okay.
Because the simple fact that her organization and mine are different, but it's community oriented.
Oh, good. Okay.
So we had a good conversation about that. Take a survey. Now, when we take a survey, one of the things that we do is get video content, and then we put it on our YouTube station, and we also put it on the pictures and video content on our Facebook page, and that's another way. And we have a comment field for people to give us comment of the things that we do.
Okay.
Another one is, how are you marketing your product? Are you just doing by word of mouth? Are you going out there and actually handing out handouts, or doing email blasts? Those are just some of the tools that you could use in order to let people know, hey, we're here. If people don't know where you're here, it's kind of hard getting your clientele.
Right. You got to have your hand up.
And marketing is a very big part. And of course, you have to have a budget in order to be able to do that. So that's one of the things that you had to keep in mind when you open up your business for the different consumers that you're targeting to.
For sure.
And have a space on your website. If you do not have a website, most people nowadays, and if they want to do business with you, they're going to check your website. And if you don't have it, that's real crucial. But you want people to give you feedback on whether you're doing things that they like or dislike.
Right.
So in your on your website, have a comment field.
Right.
That way you can get honest feedback, because they ain't going to know who you are. You ain't going to know who they are, but you'll see the different comments that will come your way. And that's a tool that you can use in order to better your business.
Cool. Excellent.
And that's about it.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess there were some areas that I was thinking about from last week's session. I didn't necessarily form the questions, but some areas that I thought would be good to have within questions. Thinking about the customer segments, the value proposition, things that you want to keep in mind, going back to which population are you targeting? So I didn't necessarily form the questions, but I had in my mind different, I guess, keywords that I wanted in those questions, like customer relationships, the target population, and things of that nature.
Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, customer segments, value proposition, customer relationships, all good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you got to add to that, Ms. Shara?
Yeah, so one, thank you guys for being open and doing this exercise. I think some of the takeaways, I heard a lot of really good questions. The biggest thing is hopeful that you guys can see, if you remember where we started with this definition here around what our overall objective is really to uncover barriers or frustrations that people face. And I heard a lot of that, and I hope you can imagine how the questions will help uncover those things, right? So you had questions around like, I kept hearing questions around like, who's your target audience? You may uncover in that very moment that entrepreneurs really struggle with defining who their target audience is, or you may discover that they struggle with connecting with those customers. We heard even questions around like who's the right person to talk to. So you may go in this and begin conversations with one group of users and realize based on the questions that you're answering, they're not the right group. Or you may even discover that, hey, I'm not talking to the group I intended to talk to, but there's a lot of frustration and I'm keep hearing the same thing over and over. Maybe this is worth me trying to build something around it. So, but yeah, good job to everyone. I even heard some kind of tactical things that I'll talk about around like how do you collect that information beyond the interview? So I heard about like putting a sign up form on your website. If you got a website, definitely think about maybe trying to collect email addresses. So that way you can go back out and reach out to folks. That's another way when we were talking about how do you start connecting with people to talk with them? That could be a really good way to do that, is just creating a website that has a strong offering and get people to see if they're willing to sign up for it. And then reaching out to those people who signed up, because they're indicating to you that you have something interesting enough that they're willing to give you their email address. You may want to reach back out to them to ask for feedback or have these kind of conversations where you ask these questions. Or you will have questions that are specific to your business that you'll want to learn more about.
Let me just jump in and see if we missed out on anyone else that had something they wanted to mention. I think did we miss Pam? Did you team up with someone?
Yes, I teamed up with Chantel and she was going to speak for us.
Okay. Y'all go ahead.
Okay, we talk about the product selections. Once you describe your company, are you going to make a choice between using product or services? And what kind of strength and weakness, if you choose the product they had? And if you have find out your SWOT analysis, the strength, weakness, and opportunity and threat of that those produce or product or services, which one are going to do well? And if they're doing well, why they're doing well? And if they're not doing well, what is the reason why they are not doing well? And what kind of market selection you're going to do for that product and where?
Okay.
The market selection for that produce, and what is the demand, the place where you want to have that produce or the services, and what is your capacity? Capacity is very important, and what are the additional support that are needed? Because I skip whatever people said before, the target market, and so I skip all that. But so it was which market selection that you are choosing, and the market selection, can it work? The produce can do well in this place versus another one. I gave an example. If you have you want to produce a fish, it's where you live. Fish is not a danger compared if you have that next to the Atlantic Ocean or the Gulf of Mexico, things like that. You have to think about where you want to take care of your produce or services. Is the region is really the market selection is fine, and the place where you are located is the right one also.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate
if you
that.
want to be, you want to be sell yourself, or you want to have a distributor, or you want to have another person taking care of that. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you. Thanks. Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, Miss Shara, what else you got for us? I know the time is starting to tick down. I want to make sure you have enough time to do all your stuff.
Absolutely. And I can move a little bit quickly through this, and then I'll combine the last two exercises. So,
Okay.
So there's a couple of ways that you can structure your research. The first approach is thinking about behavioral versus attitudinal kind of research methods. And what does that mean? That basically means what people say versus what people do. There's some instances where you want to talk with people and you want to hear and get feedback from them. And then there are other instances where you want to actually get behavioral insights. You want to see what people are doing. So how do you do that? There are a couple ways you can do that. And there's this list can be exhaustive, and I can show you. I'm happy to share additional resources, but I think these are kind of the bigger ones. So when we talk about what people say, that generally shows up in forms of like interviews, surveys, customer feedback, where you're just getting anecdotal kind of insights from your customers. And the opposite of that's what people do, which is the behavioral. So what this is where you are observing. These may be field studies, this may be A/B studies or A/B testing, and this could be heat mapping. Field studies is something I mentioned earlier, where if you are I'm trying to think of some of the ideas I heard. I heard about music licensing, right? So if you're into music licensing, you may actually want to go to a record label, or you may want to go where artists are. You may want to go to the studio. You may just want to sit back and observe to see what is that dynamic like when people are licensing their music. For my case, again, when I was looking at home repair business, or home services businesses, I'm going to talk to homeowners. I'm also going to ride along with professionals to see what is it like to have to service these jobs. I gave the example of my brother in the Big and Tall store. He may actually go to several stores and just sit back and watch as customers who fit his core target audience to see what is their experience like. Before he ever intervenes, he may just observe. I did that in a previous role where we wanted to understand about women and sports bras. And so we worked with a store, athletic apparel store, and we literally just sat in the store and we were able to pick up on things like the dressing rooms are very uncomfortable. Most of the folks that work in the store are male, and so they don't understand how to sell this apparel to the people that needed them. So that was really interesting. Analysis that you can't get by just talking. You may be able to get it, but there's this thing that we always talk about, say versus do. Sometimes people will tell you one thing and do something different. People will tell you your idea is great and I will absolutely give you my money, but when it comes time to exchange the money, they may not do it. And you want to be there in that moment to understand what else is competing for their dollars in this moment, because they told me they want to do it. So now I want to observe it. Heat mapping is another good tool. If you guys have a website, there are a lot of tools, and I'll share some of my favorite tools. You can place on your existing websites so you can get that data to see not only people come to my website and I know they come, but where do they go? And heat maps will show you, where do people click? Where do people stay on your page? Where's the last thing they saw when they left? And even more importantly, sometimes to me, is what are the things they didn't see? You had something really cool on the third page of your website, but nobody ever gets there. It's cold. Nobody sees it. Is that important enough that you need to move it up? Or does it serve you to have that if nobody sees it? You may have other reasons why you have it on there, but heat mapping will help you understand what are your customers actually doing. Both of these work, right? So I don't want the takeaway to be that one is better than the other. it just depends on what you're trying to learn, and does it make sense to talk with people. Sometimes you want to talk with people first and then build it and then see what they do. Or you may see what people do, right? You may look at your heat maps and go, nobody makes it to the bottom of my website. Now I want to talk to people to understand why and do an interview. So these things work together. It's just about having them in your toolkit and knowing when to leverage one versus the other. And then we have quantitative versus qualitative. That's the other big bucket. And I reverse these, so apologies. It should be how many. Quant is how many versus qualitative, which is why. So there's sometimes where you're going to want to just have the numbers. You want to be able to say, I have 10 million people who said they are interested in my product, and that tells me something. And of the 10 million people, 90% of them have paid me. That's a really good statistic to have. You want that data, but then you also may want to ask why. A quant-driven survey may not be able to tell you that. You'll need to be able to talk to their users. So you can have qualitative aspects in a survey, but that's where you're getting to the why. And that's something that you're not going to take that as you would with a quantitative survey and aggregate that into a statistical number. What you're going to do is you're going to want to have those key quotations, annotations of testimonials, things like that tell the why. And again, one is not better than the other. They work together. Sometimes you will see, I've worked with clients that go, we don't have any customers. That is the quantitative piece, 0. Then they want to know why we don't have customers. So then we have to figure out, how do we answer those questions? Or vice versa. We may hear from people that go, I really, 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 really want to have this cool, big and tall, trendy store. Okay, well, we talked to one person who told us that. How many other people look like this one person? And are there enough people to justify us building this? So again, they work together, and this is how they can show up. So why, that question of why can show up in interviews, customer feedback forms, and sometimes surveys. You can have qualitative surveys. We do them all the time, where a survey may say, explain your answer, tell us why, instead of just asking you on a scale of 1 to 7, what do you believe to be true? And other quantitative things that you can use, again, are these A/B studies or A/B tests, and clickstream analysis. Clickstream analysis is something I use a lot, which just says, where are people going on my page? And not just where, but how many. So I know that 50% of all people who come to my site make it down to the lower portion of my page. That may be a winning metric or may not be. Having that analysis will let you begin to dig in to understand the performance of particularly for those of you that have a product that's online or are pushing customers to a website. This insight, this information paired with the heat mapping. I even heard folks talk about like capturing customer feedback. You bring all of these things together so you can get a better understanding of who you're attracting and who you're not attracting. So I'm going to skip this exercise real quick and we'll come back to it. But I wanted to show you, before we do a final exercise, a tool I use to help me structure all of the things that we talked about today. So this is a research one-pager, and it's similar in the spirit of like a business model canvas, a lean startup canvas, where you want to have just really quick one-pager to lay out what your plans are for research. And to help you understand, like, what are the key, why are you doing this research? This is also a really good tool if you're working with other people, for you guys to sit and collaborate around, where it's easy to see very upfront, like, what have we declared? And what's kind of guiding our experience. And it's a great artifact to have after you finish the research. There are a lot of times where you may start somewhere and then you're going to continue to iterate your product and build on the things that you're learning and continuously building. And you may get to a point where someone on your team, whether it's a developer, if it's a designer, if it's an investor, that's going to say, well, how did you guys get here? This is a really good document to go back and revisit to say, well, we started off with this assumption, and here were the questions we asked, and here's the test that we did to tell us that, we believe this to be true, or this is what helped inform us into the next kind of design iteration or the development iterations that we made into our product. So I like this document. I use it frequently. I mean, every time I do research, even when there've been times where I've tried to like shortcut and like jump ahead, I've come back to this because it just helps level set for everyone what we're trying to learn. It's very easy to get into the research and then realize, wait, we are way off base from what we thought. And having this up front allows everybody to reconvene around it when you do get away from kind of your core objectives. And I want to go back because there was a question about, does anyone use research surveys? I do surveys a lot because there are times where, and I can give you the most recent example. We did one last summer where we talked with, because again, my business is in the home services space. We wanted to get feedback from repair professionals about how easy or difficult was it for homeowners to do DIY certain types of repairs? So do-it-yourself repairs. How easy was it for them to do very specific types of repairs, electrical types of repairs, plumbing type of repairs, and even some things with like an HVAC unit. And what we needed to learn was, we just wanted to know level of difficulty of each of these things. But we, again, are not the experts. Repair professionals are. So we needed to get a lot of data because we didn't want to just say, yeah, these things are easy to do because one person told us. We wanted to say these things are easy to do because 100 professionals told us this. And so we did a survey, and we were able to get that survey going and wrap it up within a few weeks. And so it gave us really good direction about where we were heading, and it validated that we talked with the right people to get that information. So that is one example. But yeah, research surveys all the time. And I'll talk to you guys about a couple of tools I use, because I think surveys and interviews are probably the easiest things to get off the ground really quickly and really cheaply. So Daisy, that's a good question. And I realized that when I put it on here. Daisy is a term we use on my team. And what that means is it's a way of talking through like decision rights, like who gets to have the last say, who's accountable for this. So a Daisy is similar to, if you've heard of a RACI, where you'd say who's either driving or responsible for the work, who's being held accountable for it, who is contributing, and who needs to be informed. So as you can see here, I fill this out based on the exercise we did here. I started filling this out because our final exercise, I'm going to turn it over to you guys to work through this a little bit more based on some of the conversations you've already had. So the background information, again, using this to facilitate conversations with your stakeholders is really helpful, this I find, with this tool. So you state up front, what is the background? Why are we doing this research? And so here, the background is really around, where does pain exist when starting a new business? And I think you guys all had questions that would help you uncover those things. Is it around knowing who your target audience is? Is it around being in the right industry? Is it around having the right technology? Like, where does the pain exist? And who are we targeting, or who should participate in this research? Early stage entrepreneurs. Here's where you list out kind of the questions. You guys have identified a lot of those questions. And based on the questions that you guys have, what I want you to do now is really spend some time thinking about the methods. So what is the best way to answer the research questions? So you guys had a lot of really good questions, and we've talked about attitudinal, behavioral, quant, or qualitative questions. So what I like to do is do a final breakout where you guys as a team can really focus on this box of methods. So I've already heard some things like surveys, but would love you to get creative and thinking about how can we answer these questions. And these can be primary and secondary methods. So I know you guys talked about primary, secondary research. This could be doing research, desktop, we call it desktop research, where you're looking for articles, any type of reports and things like that. Or you are doing primary research where you are talking directly with your customers. In my work, we do a mix of the two. We probably emphasize or put greater priority on primary, but secondary is really important, particularly when we're doing like competitive analysis and things like that. So I will turn over to Lyndon to break you guys out into your final breakout groups to think about what research methods would you apply based on what we've kind of discussed, and yeah, think about what would you go for here, and we'll come back and discuss before I close.
Okay, rooms are open. You should have an invite, and jump on in, and please jump back out or send a message if you're by yourself. We don't want anybody by themselves. Because I had no idea about the complexities or how important, market research was. Even though I'm a marketing person, I used to market records for Sony Music and Columbia Records and Epic Records and Def Jam. But you got to remember, this was all before the internet came. Matter of fact, I lost my job because of the internet, because once the internet came, record stores started closing down. And I was marketing that was my target, was independent as well as chain record stores. And it all shifted to online, and folks started losing their jobs, and I was one of them. It was a horrible time. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. And I mean, we used to, read the liner notes on album covers, and now there's nothing to touch.
I know, I miss that part. Like that used to be the best part. It's we were talking about like it's so many. I think we're industries like now we're seeing that in like a lot of these service industries too, where grocery stores now have self-checkout.
Yeah, I love that part, because I always end up behind the person counting pennies. I said, why does this always happen to me at banks and at the grocery stores? Sharon, did you learn anything?
Absolutely. I know that I don't know nothing about marketing.
Anybody want to share?
Well, I guess I'll start it off. Basically, we just elaborated on Miss Renita and myself. We just elaborated on the things that we have brought up in the other session. Got a little more deep into getting interviews, websites, getting comments, feedback from your people who be your clientele. That's real important. In doing audiovisual for so many years, we have to get good feedback on each session that we've done, whether it's a small meeting or whether it's a large show. That way you can keep your clientele coming back. And you have to not just give them a product, but give them good service on top of that. So that's a couple of things that we had talked about.
And I'll leave you guys with a couple of things that I'll also share with Lyndon as part of this. One, I've put together here kind of some of my favorite research tools. This list could go on and on and on. I tried to also focus on things that don't cost a lot of money. I mean, when you're starting a business, you're always investing, but I know wherever you can get kind of like quick learning. I think particularly early on, the actual feedback from your customers is just as valuable as getting revenue from them, because you want to know why they love your product, or you want to know why they don't like your product, and will they talk to other people about your product. So really talking to people, I can't overemphasize how important that is. If you have trouble recruiting people, there are services that will help you with that. I use these tools all the time, Respondent and User Interviews, to help you get your work started. Respondent in particular, you set out what you were willing to we call them incentives, research incentives. So how much would you pay for someone to talk to you? You don't want to always pay for people to talk to you, but if you're in a bind and you're saying, hey, I just need to talk to 10 women who use beauty products and I've just hit a wall, I can't find them, a tool like Respondent will allow you to, will help you set up a questionnaire so you can find people who match the type of people you want to talk to. And User Interviews has a similar tool, and you can set your price, especially with Respondent, and they just take half of whatever you're willing to pay. So if you say, I'm going to give people $5 to talk to me, Respondent will take $2.50 or charge you $2.50. You would pay $7.50 to talk to a particular type of user. Sometimes these tools are also great if you are working in a B2B or B2G business. So if you're doing business with government or doing business with other businesses and you want to talk with people who are in the industry that you serve, this is another way, if you can't find those professionals, to go and get like feedback from people in their field talking in that capacity. Prototyping tools are really good. I'm sorry, did somebody have a question?
No, I think that was a dog.
Oh, okay. Prototyping tools are a great way to start to show people what, get out your head, what your idea is. You can start as cheaply as just in Google Slides, creating a layout of what your website will look like. You can design that in Google Slides. There are other tools that are specifically for prototyping, like Adobe XD, Figma, Sketch. Landing pages, if you want to get to a place where you have a landing page just to see, can I put a cool value proposition out and ask people, do I get enough clicks? Do people come to my site? Will they sign up for something? Will they give me some money? You can build these really quickly using tools like WordPress, and then particularly Squarespace. I think Wix is another site people use that will let you kind of build something without having to know how to code. Testing, Usability Hub, Userlytics, Userbrain, these are products that will allow you to give people your prototype or give people a link to your website, and you can watch them interact with your site and see what happens. You can ask them questions. You can give them a survey at the end. You can ask them to rate the product, things like that. Surveying tools. Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, those things. Google Forms is free. So we talked about that earlier. If you have a survey question, you put it on Facebook, you can use Google Forms to launch that survey. And then we talked a little bit about heat mapping and user intercepts. Hotjar, Crazy Egg, I believe both of them start at like, they have like a freemium model. So if you don't have a lot of traffic yet, you can start using some of these tools for free. And they will let you do things like see, where do people go on your page? Do you want to have a user intercept? Is those things we've seen where like something pops up after 5 minutes and says, or 5 seconds, excuse me, and says, would you like to sign up to learn more? Give me your email address. So these are a lot of tools that are really helpful in trying to get you towards, and I categorize these all in the realm of research, wherever you're learning. And then these are some of the books that I'm reading. Oh, I lost one of my, it's there. You just can't see it. This book. Okay. Here are some of the books I'm reading or rereading. Inspired, which is by Marty Kagan. He's considered like the father of product management and really talks you through like what it is to build a product. He probably is coming more from a very like corporate enterprise, but there are a lot of good lessons in there. Running Lean is like the holy grail for my team right now. We have read this as a team, as a book club, and then we use this all the time. This really centers the lean canvas framework. So really trying to understand, how do you learn as quickly as possible if you have a product that's worth building. And then finally, Sprint, which is from the guys from Google in the early days. This is how Google would go about building big products, which is saying that you could do this in probably 5 days. 5 days, they challenge you to start from idea, from is there a problem, to here's a potential solution, and you will build it in the course of 5 days. And day like 2 or 3, you go out and you're already interviewing people, you're talking to people, you're doing a lot of that man on the street type stuff to get feedback, to then build your prototype, test it. And you do it in 5 days. So these are some of the things I'm reading. I've always heard that like every time people present to groups, they give their information and very few people take them up on it. I know life gets busy, things get in the way, and you guys are all trying to launch your businesses. But if you have any questions, please do use me as a resource. And if I don't know, then I'm happy to point you in the direction of where you may be able to find that answer. So that concludes it for me.
Yeah, I learned a lot of stuff, and I'm hoping that a lot of people also did as well. And definitely, we want to keep you on standby for questions. I mean, what is it that they say? You don't know when you need something until you don't have it, or something like that. And you definitely provided a good avenue for looking ahead to understand whether you are making up your mind to put your energy into getting a business off the ground that nobody wants to, deal with, or at least you need to find out the ways to go about doing it. Because some folks here have, you know, what would be considered on the track type of businesses that are common, and some folks have more uncommon types of businesses. So, it applies to everybody, whether you're doing here or putting lights in bottles. But there's definitely a marketing research study or something that you can do to test the necessity of that business and how to go about launching it correctly. So I definitely applaud you for your time. A lot of people have been able to try things out of their house.
Yep.
Which is great thing. So it gives the level of necessity of staying in the house and moving forward with the business, or going forward and getting, seeking funding, stuff like that, that can give you some startup capital to further your market research and, all the before you get above the ground stuff. So yeah, that's a real important aspect. And folks, I hope everybody took notes, because we are still focusing on that business plan, and a lot of stuff that we learned today, if you took the right notes, can go right into that business plan. We want to go from having a basic one-page business plan into having something a little bit more robust. And I'll go as far as saying even 3 to 5 pages, but there's a section for market research, and we had a good bit of time to get notes together to insert there. I want y'all to just stick around for 5 minutes, because I want to just run through the rest of my slides. They're not going to be more than 5 minutes. I just want you to be able to see them so that you'll be able to get into the workbook.
Thank you, everyone, and good luck in your businesses.
Take care. All right, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Have a good night.
You too.
Night.
Bye.
Remember, SWOT analysis comes into play. So there's something about your competitive advantage that can stand to, get beefed up by looking very well at that SWOT analysis. I know it's kind of complex. We can definitely go over it in a future class or on a one-on-one basis. But again, I think you'll be able to get a lot of information from your SWOT analysis. And today's class was about reaching customers, capturing customers, nurturing so that they can be repeat customers, obviously. The exercise, we've done enough exercises today, but again, we see pain points that have come up in the questioning, target market that's come up in the questioning. So these are important things. This is where we end, because we're going to do a whole nother class on distribution channels. That'll probably be class 6 or something like that. So that pretty much concludes what I wanted to show you guys. And I just hope that you guys were able to get stuff out of this. You took some decent notes. And again, just remember that everything we're doing is in line to beef up your business plan. So no matter what version of the business plan, I sent you guys 2 of them, whichever version you use, or if you want to come up with your own version, that's totally okay with me. I just want to see something that's more than a one-pager. I want to see at the end of the program a well thought out business plan that's multi-pages, more than one, because if you gave me a one-pager and you can double your sentences in it from all the research you're doing, then you're going to end up with a 2-pager. And if you do some real research, you can end up with the 3 to 5 pages. So just pour everything that you find. And these days you can copy and paste from one thing to another and dump stuff in your report, in your business plan, and then change the font. so that all the fonts are the same, especially if you're in Word. So it's not a lot of writing, it's just more organizational than anything else, being organized and getting some good research relative to all the questions that were asked in the very first module. You know, who's your target market, this, that, and the other. Answering those questions will get you a nice fat, business plan. And then I'm going to need to know where next week we'll be at the halfway point. We'll be halfway through the program here. So I will want to know who knows about PowerPoint presentations, because that's another thing we're going to be looking at doing in connection with your business plan, is making a PowerPoint presentation reflecting what's in your business plan. So if you have no problems with PowerPoint, you should be able to, make one within a week or two. But if you need to get started with that earlier and be working on a PowerPoint in conjunction with your business plan, I definitely suggest you do that. If there are issues, you need to know something, please, I'm here for you. Reach out to me, shoot me an email. If we have to get on the phone or a Zoom call the very next day or that time, if things are cool, I'm free, we'll do it. But at the earliest possible convenience, I want to get on the phone or Zoom call and help you out. That's what I'm here for. You guys all have great ideas for businesses. I'm seeing progress. 2 or 3 of you already did some great stuff, opening bank accounts, getting an EIN number, this, that, and the other. I don't want to lose the momentum, so let's keep it going, okay? We're going to have speakers for every class and some guest speakers. I hope something fell into place with regards to you building your business plan.